Welcome to Collective SOULversations. I'm Jody Jones, and I'm thrilled to have you join me on this amazing journey exploring spirituality, healing, and personal growth. With over 15 years of experience as a psychic medium and energy healer, I've made it my mission to help people connect with their true selves, and I can't wait to share this journey with you. In every episode, I chat with incredible guests who bring their own unique stories and insights to the table. We dive into different tools and practices that can help support you on your path of self-discovery. So whether you're just starting out or you've been in this journey for a while, Collective SOULversations is all about creating a friendly and welcoming space for us to explore the mysteries of the soul together. So grab your favorite cup of tea, get comfy, and let's dive into this enlightening adventure together. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Collective SOULversations. I am your host, Jody Jones, and I am feeling privileged to bring our special guest on today because he's somebody who I feel like I have been following him, watching his teachings, feeling his energy transmissions for a really, really long time. And so I'm excited that he's able to fit us into his schedule. I'm excited that I get to have a conversation with him, and I'm feeling really grateful that you guys are going to get an opportunity to meet him and connect with him energetically. So, our special guest today is Steve Ahnael Nobel, and Steve is the author of 6 nonfiction books. The 2 most recent are The Spiritual Entrepreneur and Joy at Work. He was a director of a not for profit spiritual organization called Alternatives, which is based in St. James Church in Piccadilly, London, for 13 years, leaving on the winter solstice of 2012. I have to hear about that. We need to ask about that.
Yeah.
Subsequently, he began his own healing and awakening work. He has created a healing system called Soul Matrix Healing for Starseeds. He has created a library of free resources, including meditations and transmissions to help starseeds, which are freely available on his website and YouTube channel. We'll have all the links in this episode. These meditations and transmissions are played all over the world, and so far the platform has over 189,000 subscribers. He regularly runs events in the UK and overseas. And so Steve says a simpler way of putting it is this planet is going from fear to love, from separation to unity consciousness. This shift has been planned for some time. Many starseeds have incarnated here to help with the shift. This is not an easy mission, as many of you may have gathered. Starseeds come from a higher density dimension and are here to take part in this shift. As you may have discovered, 3D density is tough. Some starseeds have been here for many lifetimes, and some are here for the first time. You can also find Steve on Telegram. Welcome, Steve. Welcome. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thanks, Jody. Thanks for having me.
Beautiful. So I want everybody to kind of get, I feel like when you're on social media all the time and you're doing the work that you do, I feel like we don't always get a chance to know who you are, like how you became who you are. And so can you take us back a little bit, maybe prior to the 2012, but I really want you to tell me about what happened there because I
Uh-huh.
feel like there's something there. But kind of take us back and let us know about who you are, how you became doing what you're doing.
Well, my family are, well, their parents have passed now, but my family pretty working class, British, London, North London. Um, and they were interested in, I suppose, regular 3D things, you know. My father would go once a week to the pub on a Sunday. I'd go when I was young. I remember sitting outside different pubs and thinking, oh, well, this is what adult life is like. You just go around different pubs, I suppose. My mother was more stay at home, knitting and doing that kind of stuff. I was very interested in spirituality from a young age, but it was kind of more into um, fantasy stories, sci-fi stories, superhero. That's the way in. I was like, oh, this is all wonderful. Doctor Who, then Star Trek, Bewitched was another one. I really loved Bewitched. It was one of my favorite because it really showed, witches were always like dark and nasty, but suddenly there was this, beautiful witch doing good stuff. I
Yeah.
also remember the first film I ever saw was The Sword in the Stone, that old Disney film, which I loved, the Merlin and all that. And so I kind of loved all this, but my parents were tolerant and then less tolerant and then intolerant. So as a teenager, I was really searching for something. I was going to spiritual organizations and writing to authors and really looking, but I didn't really find what I was looking for. So I became normal for a period of time. I married. I went into the city of London, worked in banking and married, had two children. By the age of 25, two children. But then my father passed in 1991, and that was a trigger for me just to wake up again. And after that, his death, within 6 months, all the major teachers, channels, books, people I was going to meet in the next 20 years, the main ones were I was connected to rapidly in synchronistic, very synchronistical events. And that was my experience of synchronicity. And then from there, I found a crystal healer who I worked with intensely. And I remember I used to go once a week for crystal healing. My then ex-wife thought I was completely bonkers. Why are you going for crystal healing? You don't need crystal healing. What is this crystals all about?
Right.
And so, but what it did for me, well, she introduced me to a lot of other things, which was very, very important. But what it did for me, I started to feel her hands in my energy field with my eyes closed. And I thought, how can I feel her hands? And so I said to her one day after about 7 weeks of this, I said, I can feel where your hands are. She said, well, tell me. And I said, well, they're over my head somewhere, a few feet over my head, I think. And then she said, open your eyes. And I looked and you put probably 3 or 4 feet above my head. And that was like, how could I know that? And then she introduced me to the idea of we create our reality. This was my first ever back in 1991 or 92. And I was like, we create our reality. That's such a cool idea, but how does that work? And so I started experimenting. I was always late for my appointments. I have to drive across London. London's quite a big city. And I was always late, always apologetic. And I thought, well, if this works, let me see if I can be on time. So I visualized all of the lights being green and it didn't work. I still got there late. So I'm like, oh, this didn't work. Maybe it doesn't work. But then I had an intuition. Don't visualize. It's hard work trying to visualize every single light, and there must have been dozens and dozens of them.
Right.
I had this intuition to visualize a clock, and me walking into her therapy room at 10 o'clock it was usually 10 o'clock in the morning, I think I used to meet her. And it worked. I walked within, 15 seconds of 10 o'clock. And I'm like, oh, okay. I tried it again and again and again, and it worked every
Wow.
time. And I thought, oh, that's freaky. And then she told me there were car parking angels or something. And I thought, car parking. All right, let's try car parking. And that started working. I started being able to park my car. And I've always thought that car parking angels have a really boring job. I don't know how you would get a job like that, or
It does make
anyway,
our life easier though, right? I come in and the spot opens up magically. Yeah, it's beautiful.
it's amazing. So I went on the whole journey of reality creation, creating reality from the inside out, testing the universe, making connections. In 1992, I started going to an organization called Alternatives. I eventually became a director in 2000, but I was a volunteer in 1994, I think, or 95. So I was starting on this wild adventure, doing everything from shamanism to light body to metaphysics to channeling to. I just explored the whole. I thought this is amazing. The universe is
Right.
magical. I always
Right.
suspected it was, and it is
Yeah.
magical. And then, so I became a director of alternatives, and that's when it's almost like a big step up because then I felt I was holding the organization energetically. I felt it immediately. It was like I was holding this energy field. It was very weird, but the other people in the organization didn't know what I was talking about.
Hmm.
So I could sense a bit like a spider web. You can put your finger on it, you can feel, is it harmonious? Is there any ripples coming from anywhere? And so in the end, I remember one of the directors said to me, "Look, I don't know what you're talking about, but I do trust what you're saying." So they just went with it. They didn't know what I was on about.
Right. Right.
And I was into all the weird and wacky. To be honest, I was the most out there director. There was two or three of us, and I was the one who was eventually the one holding the vision because I was the one exploring, and so I was holding a vision for the organization. It became very profitable, but then in 2010, I started feeling that the impulses of this this time is finishing here, and I didn't like that impulse. I've always followed spirit very closely for many, many years, but I did not like that. I did not
Right.
want to leave that.
Right.
This was a
This was in
family. This
2010.
this was
Yes.
2010, and so I
Right.
held on. But by 2011, I could feel kind of life imploding. The resistance was never a good idea to resist, and so I resigned. I resigned at the beginning of 2012, and I gave them a year to help find a replacement. And so I left on the winter solstice. I thought, you're going to leave, you might as well leave on an important date.
Right. Leave on a bang. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was a big ritual, 300 people, and that was my final on the solstice. That was my final bow out of the organization. After probably organizing about 2,000 events there, altar
Wow.
events, and meeting all these spiritual, the Deepak Chopra, Eckhart Tolle's, Julia Cameron's, Byron Katie's, all those lovely names, which is lovely to meet them, really, and
Yeah.
host them, put
Yeah.
them on.
Yeah.
And then I was in a period which it was a kind of a dark night of the soul, which lasted to 2016 when I got the message to start this. So that's roughly the kind of journey of the last, I don't know, 30 years. And I've been doing this for the last 8 years. So,
Wow.
and I keep getting impulsed because one thing about alternatives was I was trusting guidance a lot. So I was very connected to my intuition, and it helped me make the organization profitable and successful. And so I've been doing it. This is a different baby, this is just a small business. It's not like a big, you know, not for
Right.
profit, but I've trusted and followed, and by and large, they've led me, and I've done what they've said, and it's worked. I
That's
just say
very
yes
cool.
to
That
it.
right.
You know,
Just say
right?
yes.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know that because that 2010 date is a significant time. I don't know if that kind of has come into your awareness, but there were many, many of us who had, I'm not going to say like the beginning of the awakening because I feel like the moment that we like took our first breath on this planet, we were part of the awakening. But in that 2010 time, a lot of us had something significant that really kind of stopped us in our tracks, kind of made us rethink things. It was a lot of us started kind of that slow ease into the dark night of the soul. Some of us that dark night of the soul like lingers for a while.
Yeah.
Were you aware of something in particular? Because I can honestly say in 2010, I was doing this stuff, but I wasn't fully in the way that we are now. In 2010, is not as much was online. There wasn't a lot of that stuff going. People certainly weren't talking about star seeds and ascension symptoms and all of that. Was there something, have you learned that so there was something going on in that particular time?
Well, prior to 2010, or 2012, actually, prior to 2012, I didn't believe in Ascension. I didn't believe in 2012. I did believe there was a new age of light coming, but I didn't know. I thought, well, 2012 is so arbitrary, and I'm not sure if it's real. I heard some people talking about it, but it wasn't very convincing. So I was not
Right.
convinced about it. I was thinking, well, something's happening, but I don't know what it is. So when I hit it, it hit me full force. And it was only afterwards that I kind of connected the dots and realized, you know what, that 2012 was significant. And the 2010 was the build up to, I was feeling it ahead of time, I think. And it shook it's like somebody picked me up, turned me upside down and shook me. My whole life shifted. Everything shifted. Nothing stayed the same.
Right.
And it
Right.
was so dramatic, and then I
Yes.
was in the dark night for, 6 years, which is a long, a long time, or was it several years? Gosh, my brain, it's been a long day. It was several years anyway. Um, and when I came out and I had I'd been disconnected from guidance for, this time, and it was very difficult. My life being shaken up, and there was no voices, there was no intuition, there was no impulses
Right.
anymore. So I'm
Right.
like, well, this is the very time I need you. You've just picked me up, shook me
Right.
all over the place, and now you've gone. I
Right.
was felt abandoned totally. But I
Absolutely.
had to kind of find my way. I couldn't even meditate. It was so
Right.
difficult even to meditate. I found even
Yeah.
meditating was discombobulating. And I had my introduction to dark forces in that time because I didn't believe in dark forces. I knew there was kind of people who were manipulative or psychic interference, but dark forces I didn't believe in.
Right.
Um, I had my contact with dark forces in the dark night, and they did kick me quite hard, and I didn't feel I had a defense against them. So I've had to learn quickly about them, about defending myself and helping others to do that, and to embrace more of the light.
Yeah, for sure. And it's true because, back in that day, and I mean, I was following, Eckhart Tolle as well, Deepak Chopra, all of these spiritual gurus that were like, letting us know that there was something much bigger than, than who we were. But they weren't talking about dark night of the soul, and they weren't talking about entities that can come in and very much, I feel like we have a very similar experience and path because at around that same time 2010 was kind of like my ascending or ascension, but my dark night of the soul started. And I can remember in 2012 being at a solstice event and being like, okay, I'm going to get saved now, right? Like the angels are going to come down. This is, everything's going to open up. There's going to be glory. And it was the opposite.
Yeah,
it,
it was the
it
opposite.
really was. And then it's the same thing you're saying. Like when we are going through that dark night of the soul, I, as somebody who is a psychic medium, has the ability to always channel spirit. They're always there. I can hear them. And then it was gone for
Mm,
me. It was gone. My soul connection to my higher self was gone. And it scared me so
mm,
much.
me
And is
too.
that, yeah, that, and it's, isn't it, you wonder, okay, so I've decided to work in the light. I've decided to be of service. I'm, putting my life to help others, to guide others, to do my best, to heal my stuff. And then now this, this,
Yeah,
this
someone
is
turned
the
the lights
result.
off and nobody told us.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
And so what do you feel like? Because now obviously you've come out of the Dark Night of the Soul, that episode of it, but maybe touch a little bit too on that because I feel like when people say, yeah, I had the Dark Night of the Soul, people think, oh, well, you just had like a few bad moments. But you're saying 6, 7 years. Tell us a little bit
yeah.
about what was going on during that time.
Actually, it was 8 years. I think. Actually, I think 8 years
Wow.
because
So
I came
even,
out in
yeah.
2016. Um, well, it was almost like um, I think the path, which it as we step up and go further, the path can get more challenging. It's and there can be like miracles and wonderful, wonderful stuff happening. My life did become more wonderful and magical, but there were challenges. So being a director of that organization, certainly I had to kind of deepen myself. And then when I went in the dark night of the soul, I was at a complete loss because none of the things I'd learned for 20 years worked.
Right.
And I'm like, was it all rubbish then? And I knew it wasn't rubbish because it was working, but now suddenly it was not working any longer, and I didn't know why.
Hmm.
So I had to search and look around. I went and saw 12 healers and 12 or so healers, and most of them didn't have a clue what I was talking about. It did, but two of them did. And one of them was very helpful in helping me unhook interference from one particular person that I had no idea about, that interference could come so strongly through a romantic connection. And I've
Right.
since learned that intimacy and blood connections are the two most powerful ways that we can feel uplifted or even interfered with. Um,
Right.
so I had no idea that entities could come through somebody's energy field like that. And I don't think she had any idea either, the person concerned. And so
Hmm.
I got cleared. And I, it was interesting because the moment I got cleared, the person who I hadn't heard from in 4 or 5 years emailed me going, "Hi, how are you doing?" I'm like, that is so interesting. I've just been cleared from this connection and you just
Right.
emailed me. And I was like,
Right.
yeah, fine, thank you. I think she
Right.
wanted even to reinitiate something, and I was like,
Right.
maybe not,
Right.
So
Right.
I'm going to go back into that. Although I did learn a lot from her, actually. I mean, she was on the spiritual path. I did a lot from her. So there was that. And then the other person I met, this other healer, actually, and she said, when I met her, she said, "Oh, I knew you were coming. I was told 2 weeks ago in my meditations." I was like, "Oh, okay."
Right.
And she said she was doing light body surgery, which I thought, light body surgery, all right. And so she said, my guides are telling me I'm going to give it to you for free. And she, for a year, worked on me. I mean, I hardly knew her, and she just worked on me and helped immensely. We're good
Wow.
friends. I've done a lot of training in light body surgery and other stuff with her, and that was amazing. And I thought so. There were these blessings, but they were like they were like little shining stars, and they were powerful ones, but it was still very black. And but
Right.
now where I'm at, I realize if I hadn't have gone through that dark night of soul, I probably would just petered on doing what I was doing, never
Right.
have left alternatives,
Right.
stay doing that, never have stepped up. So that what I feel about the dark is that they are actually helping. This might be controversial, but I do feel they're helping to activate the light in us.
Yes.
You know, we can go and have beautiful experiences, go to Bali. I was in Bali last September, have beautiful experiences, or we can face a tremendous shadow, a challenge, and both can activate us. So my
Right.
soul was like, well, it looks like we can't dangle any more carrots. Let's give him a big whacking stick. And I think the
Right.
soul does drive us forward, with a carrot or stick. It doesn't sound
Right.
very spiritual, but I think the soul will do it. Pain or follow the dream. It's one or the
Right.
other.
Yeah, for sure. I'll say the same thing. It's either like that gentle nudge or it's the frying pan over the head. That's
Yeah. Frying
the
pan
way
over
that
the
they
head.
communicate with us for sure. And I,
Yeah.
I have to agree because and especially in the light worker community, especially in the spiritual community, there's not a lot of education or talking openly and raw about your experiences with dark energy. There's just not. It's a lot of love and light, right? It's a lot of, I used to call it the rainbows and unicorns. There's a lot of that. And I clearly was experiencing something different. And I feel like we go through that really, really big experience we call the dark night of the soul so that we can have that initiation into the dark, so that we can know it fully and recognize it, that it's not unknown. And, so there's no fear to have of it. There's no, it doesn't have any power over us. But in the same sense, we need to be able to know how to, work with it. We need to, know how to manipulate it so that it's not harming us. And do you feel like, because this was when I was going through that same thing, went and saw, a dozen or more energetic healers. And I was told on several occasions, well, you're under psychic attack because
Mm,
of the amount of light that you carry, the amount of gifts that you have, you are on the dark's radar. What's your
yeah.
feeling about that and being somebody that's, on the radar?
Yeah. I mean, the moment you step up and become public, you become more on the radar for sure. But it's almost like the dark side know if you're going to step up, or suspect that you're going to step up, even if you're not stepping up. So you might get attacked even if you're not stepped up. I had stepped up to a certain degree, and they were kind of, well, we've got to actually. What they did was actually help me step up even more. Even though they
Okay.
were trying to prevent it, but they actually did the opposite, and that unintentionally for them. But I think it's allowed. The higher self will allow it. I do believe. I thought, well, why does my higher self allow this stuff?
Right.
Why did my higher self actually switched it off before I even stepped into it? Because it knew, because I used to, the way I used to operate was I used to travel, astral travel or shamanic journey into patterns, and I should see what was coming all the time. I could see what was ahead of the path, and I could look into something energetically. Several months before the dark night really hit, that started switching off. And I'm like, I
Mhm.
can't see anymore. In the way say I can't see energy in the same way I could see it before. So I think the higher self switched it off, going, well, if you know what's coming, you are going to run in the opposite direction.
Right.
And so we're not going to let you know, which
Right.
was very nice of them, you know.
Right.
But it's true. I would have run in the opposite. I'd have done everything I could not to have gone there.
Right.
Because everything collapsed. My long-term relationship at the time collapsed. The home I felt was very home collapsed. My identity, connection to alternatives collapsed. Friends collapsed. You know, friends who were like, we don't understand what's going on with you. You know, are you having some kind of mental breakdown? So
Right.
everything went, everything.
Yes.
So I was scrambling, and I was very fortunate in also I found a spiritual community. It was a very quirky one. And for
Mm.
the 4.5 years that I really needed some support, I just lived in this quirky house in East London full of renegade Buddhists who had a great sense of humor and were kind of very irreverent. And it was just what I needed, really. I
Right.
couldn't tell them about what was going on, but I could laugh with them in the kitchen about all kinds of strange nonsense, and it was fine, you know.
Right.
And yeah, and then I got the feeling I had to leave there, and that was. But I would have stayed there for it. I kind of, when I feel something I like, I kind of stay, and I go, oh, I like this, I'm staying. But the higher self moved me on, and it was like the community had been going for 32 years, and then suddenly the guy who owned it decided he was going to sell it to the local Buddhist center. They didn't like the brand of Buddhists that were living there. It was very strange. After
Mm.
so long, very odd. Anyway, I got moved out. So that was another. So I've been constantly on the move. It's like, well, where do I lay my head? You know, where is home? Where is, and finally, actually, you know, in recent years, I have found home. I'm in this beautiful apartment overlooking the town in the southeast coast of England and the sea. Every morning I see the sun rising over the sea. It's really beautiful. And I feel this is a home. And I'm very prolific here. And I've been here since December. And since December, I had an explosion of, you know, transmissions and work and everything. It just exploded. So
Wow.
finally
That's
in the right
beautiful.
place. But and so, you know, on the journey as well, when I did come out, I started having transmissions, which you guys know about. I've had these transmissions and downloads. And I didn't trust it at the beginning for sure. I didn't trust. I'm like, well, what is this? Who are these people that want me to put this out? Who am I to put this out? You know, and the first one was in Greece. I was running a writing retreat in Greece because I used to do writing retreats after I left alternatives. And I had this download in a little chapel on the edge of the sea. You could fit about 6 people in it. It's one of those tiny little chapels. And I had this pressure,
Right.
and I was like, oh, what's this? It took me a week to come tune in. And it was the first one I ever did, which was the Earth Star Goddess, which was down. I did that in 2013, I think. And I had a lot of resistance about doing it. Because, you know, why would
Right.
I be channeling goddesses? You know, what? Go find a woman to do it. Don't come through me.
Right. Right.
Anyway, I decided, you know what? I can't say no. Resistance is not the way. If I resist, it could create problems. I just say so. I said yes, and finally, and that's what I've been doing. I've been saying yes, but I have negotiated with the teams and higher self. I've said to them, I'll do this on a few conditions. One of them is that I want to be able to pay my rent. I don't want to be struggling, you
Right.
know, every week. I want to be able to, if I'm going to do this work, please make this work okay, which they have.
Yes.
Um, and the other one was I'm not just going to, because I used to know people who used to channel, and I actually did a retreat in Mount Shasta with some of these guys, and there was 4 or 5 of us doing it, and they were nice guys actually. And one of them said, well, the organizer said, you and this other guy are going to do a session tomorrow morning. I said, great. What are we doing it on? And the other guy said, oh, we'll just feel it and we'll just tune in on the day. And I'm like, this is my worst nightmare. You know, I can't do that. So I tuned in and got
Right.
my own thing. So whatever he was
Right.
channeling the moon and channeling everything under the sun. And I was very focused on this is what I'm doing. And I was trying to dovetail it with him as far as possible. It wasn't easy because he was going all over the universe. And so what I've said
Right.
to the teams is I will do it, but I will run it through my system first and to make sure it's complete and it works. If it does, I'll put it out. And I'm
Wow.
not, if there's something missing, I have to run it through this because sometimes we miss something and I go, there's something missing. What's missing? And then I get the missing piece and it's complete. And then, okay, perfect. Off it goes.
That's
So
very
I
interesting.
put it through my own body first, my own energy fields to feel it because I'll get a feeling, no, 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 no. Or something comes, I go, no, it's not ready. I've had one, which was one about healing tribal karmic stuff. That's been sitting on my desktop for about 2 years going, no, it's not landed. And then I've done it recently in the last month since coming here. It landed. I went, oh, okay, perfect. Let's do it. So I put that
It's
out.
ready. Yeah. So
And
can
another
you,
one, a
because
highlight decree.
not everybody is going to understand when you talk about transmissions, right? Not everybody understands the being a channel and how that works. So can you tell us, like, what was the very first, of course, you had the, the knowledge about this because you were exploring all of these different avenues and, obviously people were talking about it. But what was the very first time that you were like, okay, I'm going to do a transmission? And explain to our listeners, what do you mean by doing a transmission? What's involved in that?
Okay. Well, one thing is I worked with these two channels for years and I love their material called in America, Orin and Darben. Orin and Darben. And you can, their website is orindarben.com and Orindaben. And I even went to America and I trained with them light body surgery and sorry, not light body surgery, awakening the light body. And it was cosmic. These are six-dimensional guides coming through. They were cosmic guides, lovely guys, lovely beings. And I trusted them. I still trust their material, absolutely. Now, what they were doing was transmissions. They would transmit, they would speak about energy centers or not chakras, but other energy centers and layers of the aura and all kinds of things. And they would be transmitting the energy to you as they're speaking it. So it's not like you have to work it out in your mind. They're giving you an energetic projected transmission to you. So I did that for about 20 years and I didn't think anything of it. And then in 2016, when I just started waking up, one guy I met was doing, what was he doing? He was doing transmissions training, teaching people how to do it. So I did this training. It was a weekend course. And I realized that what I'd been doing all this time, and he just gave me a final little piece actually. I was like, and I went, oh, I can do that. I think I can do that.
Right.
So, but I started to do it in a very different way than what was being taught, and I started. That was my journey of beginning it really, and putting it into a structure. And the structure was these six archangels, which you probably heard. These six archangels. So
Well, let
all,
let our listeners know which six archangels did you put this with?
so the beginning to begin, I knew like in all traditional magical systems, there's four directions of the horizontal plane: east, south, west, and north. Every magical system has it. They have different correspondences. In England and Native Americans maybe may have a different correspondence. But in England and in the European system, east is air, mind, south is fire, will, west is water, emotion, north is earth, body. This was the European, which I was familiar with.
Hmm.
So I meditated calling the angels. Now, Raphael in the east was very quick. Michael in the south, very quick. Gabriel in the west, very quick. So I got these three angels very quickly. The fourth one, Uriel, was the most mysterious and difficult. It took me, I don't know how long to connect and go, oh, that's the angel. Uriel, that's the angel. And even to this day, I find him still the most mysterious, actually, of
Hmm.
all of them. I need to actually meditate more with him. I'm very familiar with the other three. I've worked with him a lot, but I haven't really dived in as much as I should with him. Then I've meditated on the vertical plane because every magical system has above and below. And Sandalphon and Metatron came, which are very Kabbalistic. The
Right.
archangels holding the top of the tree and the bottom of the tree.
Hmm.
And it fitted and clicked. I was like, fabulous. And, I feel when I call those angels, I can feel them coming. I can feel the energy. I can feel my energy field expand. So every transmission is held within these six archangels. And then there's a transmission. The transmission is through my voice as I'm tuning into whatever it is. It could be clearing your throat chakra. And so I'm going, but all of it comes through my field, throat, and out to the people listening. And people will say, "Oh, you've got a magical voice, and your voice is so strong." I mean, I don't feel it because
Right.
I'm so close to it, but other people feel it.
Right. Yes.
Um, so that's the transmission. The difference between a meditation and a transmission might be, well, someone might say, have a breath, close your eyes, visualize a unicorn before you. There's a rainbow bridge, cross it with your unicorn. And it's not a transmission, you're guiding people. You're not actually transmitting energy, you're just guiding them on a
Right.
little journey. And
Yes.
you're kind of speaking to their mind and asking their unconscious mind to create these images and bring them back. So it's a kind of different between a meditation and a transmission.
Right. One
Um,
is more passive and one is more active, right? That's
Yeah. And I do get a bit confused on my own channel because some of them I've called meditations, but I think they are, but they're transmissions. And the guides say, no, call this one a meditation. And I'm like, oh, I'm a bit confused, but all right, I'll do what you said. So I'm not
right.
100% clear myself on why some of them are being called meditations. But if they
Right.
say it, I just go with it. So yeah.
Right. Yes. So you say that. So that you say that you're doing these transmissions, working with collectively with the archangels. And what about though when you talk about your team? So is there another set of energies or entities or beings that you have the awareness of that are working with you as well?
Well, the team would be higher selves. And I say higher selves because I do believe we have more than one higher self. It's like from the sixth dimension to the 12th dimension, each plane has its own spectrum of higher self, really. So, so all the way up from 6 to 12. But somebody may be working with a higher self on the sixth, and that may be perfect. It's not like higher is better, it's what is appropriate.
Right.
And this is a sideline, but I do think this idea of twin flame idea is people, which is basically people we have with a powerful karmic connection. There's a lot of romance being put into that, but I do think we have more than one. And again, it's their planes of existence.
Right.
I believe anyway.
Yes.
So
Yes.
anyway, so with these higher selves, and we may be working with more than one higher self, depending. Um, there are other angels and archangels um, that can be called in. Archangels of the sun, archangels of the central sun, Pleiadian system, archangels of the great central sun, Sirian system. There can be archangels of Andromeda. There's lots of angels on the earth plane working with all kinds of, bits of the earth plane. Um,
Hmm.
there's guides and interdimensional guides. Not all guides are, you know, connected to the earth plane. Some are other planes, which we call in. There are stellar races. I personally I feel very connected to Sirian, Andromedan, Pleiadian, Arcturian, and some Orion. Actually, the Orion's a tricky system, but there are positive beings in the Orion system or connected to that system. Um, and there are specialist teams. So you can have a team working with you for your ascension. You can have a team working with you for your healing. For healers have healing teams. Uh, People who are teaching ascension have ascension teams usually. People who are working in business may have a kind of business team. There are guides and angels interested in business and money and abundance. It's kind of I
Right.
found that out in alternatives because when the company was struggling at the beginning, I called on them and said, "You got to tell me how to make this work." And so there are beings who know about all kinds of bits.
Right. Yes.
You can get beings with all kinds of specialities on the other side. Doctors, surgeons, business people. They're all with all those range of skills. They're still there,
Right.
and
Yes.
we can call them in and their
Yes.
higher self. So we gather these teams, and um, but from time to time, it's really useful to ask spirit to upgrade the team because sometimes they need a bit of an upgrade. It's a bit like, well, it worked well last year, but I really need, can you just shake them up a bit and replace a few members? And spirit will do it. But I think we need to ask. I don't know why we should ask. I know there's free will, but surely they should be able to do this. But maybe it's a free will thing. I don't know. But we
I
have
know
to
it
ask.
would be nice if some of these things were automated. Would
Yeah. Even if
just
I
as
give permission for you to automate it, but it doesn't
right,
seem to happen.
right,
They still
right,
want you
right.
to ask.
It's in the same thing. So when I started doing the rituals for clearing my energy twice a day, going into prayer meditation, doing this, I had to discover it myself. It wasn't just given to me, but I had to go in and actually clear all aspects of my being. So just like how you're saying, there's aspects of us in all dimensions. I had to go in and specifically say, also clear all aspects of my being. Now, there's that part of me that is like, why don't you guys just know that? Isn't there? But I guess it's they're just saying to me now, live and learn. We're here to. They don't give us all the answers right off the thing. It would defeat the
Yeah.
purpose, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as you say, there are many, many layers and levels, and I'm always learning about different bits and it wouldn't be nice if you just tell me, here's the manual, but it's like, well, no, if you really learn experientially by encountering it and then finding your way through it with our help. And that seems to be the
Right,
way, well, I learn and many people learn by encounter rather than, well, here's the theory. And so when you meet it, you'll know what to do, but it's rather, oops,
right,
what's this? Now we got to find our way of
right.
dealing with this. And
Yes,
I think the other aspect of layers is at the beginning of the journey, we're really clearing everything from the heart downwards because a lot of the ego stuff is heart chakra downwards. And we're clearing that out. But then once that's done, we start really clearing out a lot more of the higher stuff,
yes.
higher interferences. And we can be interfered higher up as well, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's well, I'm glad that you kind of brought that up because I can remember quite a while ago I was doing a session with a client, and this was somebody who also was a light worker, and she said to me, I'm not working with the angels anymore. I'm not, because I had such a bad negative experience with them. She said that when I was working with them, they turned into something evil. It was dark, and she was saying to me, you know, so I feel like I need to be really guarded as to what kind of angelic energy I bring in because I had a really bad dark experience with it. And at
Yeah.
the time, I was like, well, it's really in all simplicity, it's about frequency. So if you are a vibrational match with something that is denser, then obviously that allows that energy to come into you. So in my mind, it was like, so maybe that's just like a little bit of, some hygienic needs to be done for you, right? Some clearing of your energy, some raising of your frequency so that that darkness doesn't come in. Because in my knowing and being forever the optimist, I was like, well, no, the angels are not dark. The angels they're not from darkness. And I haven't experienced that. But do you think that's, it's that like attracts like? Is that what brings, the density of the darkness into us? Is our own vibrational frequencies?
We've all got stuff to clear. There's all shadow
Yes.
aspects, other lifetime aspects. So we've all got stuff to clear. But I think there are false light beings that we have to wake up to. False light beings can pose as guides, angels, higher self. And, if you ever read a lot of the old occult writers, they would say, always ask a guide questions 3 times, like, do you serve the light? Do you serve my highest purpose? Do you serve? And they may lie to you, but even in lying to you, you will get very clearly that, no, no, but you have to
Right.
ask them the questions, deep questions. And, it's a bit like, I do think it's mainly this would apply to women mostly. Imagine some good-looking guy comes up to you in a discotheque and going, "Hi," and he looks good, sounds good, but you rather than just going with them, you actually ask them a few questions. And if you've got 3 really
Right.
good questions, you'll really quickly know, is this guy, a fake? Is he just like putting it on? Does he know anything? And then you go, you know what?
Right.
I'm not going dancing with you, actually. And so I
Right.
think we have to treat angels and guides in the same way. And the more we connect with them, the more we build a relationship with them, the more we get the feeling, the vibrational feel of them. Oh, this is right, rather than there's something off. If there's something
Right.
off with a guide, you have to banish them.
Right.
They say in
And
shamanism, if a power animal, because they deal a lot with guides or animal guides,
right.
if an animal guide comes presenting its teeth to you, banish it. Do not accept
Really.
it. So
Hmm.
that's yeah, it's a shamanic idea. And in shamanism, they wouldn't really encourage you to call in things like serpents in the beginning. Later on, maybe, but in the beginning, that can be very tricky, those kind of energies.
Right.
So
They're tricksters.
wolves
They have
and
a bit of
bears
trickster
are
energy.
kind of
Yeah.
nice. Hmm?
They have a bit of a trickster energy, right? There's like that.
Yeah, they can be. Sometimes darker energies do come in as snakes or spiders or insectoids type things. So, but not all. There can be serpents that come in that are very helpful. Yeah, but at the beginning of the journey, you don't know the difference. So it's better
Right.
not to have them come in. Stick with the bears, the wolves, the stags, and the deers. They're much easier to connect with, you know.
Right, for sure. And when you talk about, so you, I mean, you use the word starseed, and a lot of people use this word. I want to hear your full understanding of when you call somebody a starseed, what your full understanding of that is.
So, um, a starseed is someone who's lived many lifetimes in other planes of existence, other dimensions, other planetary systems. And these other planes would be much higher frequency. So um, there is a tendency in starseeds to feel the Earth is not really my home. I'm kind of visiting. There's that kind of feel.
Right.
Or there's a big draw to sci-fi or maybe those kind of fantasy programs, which looks at that shows possibilities of world being very different, more magical. There's a sense that the world is more magical than the 3D media tells us it is. 3D media or
Right.
science would say it's all, even consciousness is an accident of chemicals. There's nothing magical about consciousness. You die with the body, all of these kind of things. So starseeds also are drawn to alternative lifestyles. They're very drawn. A lot of new starseeds coming in, very concerned about the planet. And I know dark forces are revving up their agendas about climate and all of that, but actually, the starseeds are concerned about the planet. We do need to conserve the planet because things are happening to the planet. It's not great. You know,
Right.
microplastics in the oceans and all kinds of pollutions and all kinds of things. So the other thing is that starseeds are coming in with a different level of intelligence. Now, it's not that people who are not starseeds are not intelligent. Of course they are, but there's a higher level of intelligence. You've got people coming in like Tesla. He didn't. And the thing about Tesla and the other guy who invented the light bulb, they knew each other. The light bulb guy, I forget his name now. Anyway, he used to be very
Edison.
pedantic,
Yeah. Yeah.
wasn't it?
Thomas Edison.
Edison, yeah, Edison. Edison was not a starseed, and Edison looked at Tesla and said, "You're not scientific." They worked together for a while, but Tesla couldn't work with Edison, and Edison was experiment 1,000 times, bit by bit, pedantic, pedantic. That's how an Earth person who's been here a long time would approach something. A
Right.
starseed like Tesla would sit in a chair and imagine it, and he'd imagine
Right.
his experiments. Would they work? And so before he even did them, he'd kind of go through in his mind. Edison said it's totally unscientific. So they
Right.
separated. You had people like Einstein dreaming the law of relativity of riding a rainbow. Now, that's not something somebody is, that's a starseed type of thing. Then you've
Right.
got other ones coming in like in the flower power movement. A lot of musicians were starseed. I think Bowie, Hendrix, Lennon, these were all kind of starseed stuff because music was an avenue they could go in and be weird. There's not a
Right.
lot of avenues that they could go in and be weird. I can be
Right.
totally weird and wear my flowery shirts, and have weird socks or whatever I do. My grandkids go, granddad, not again. You're on YouTube again doing this meditation stuff. But I can be as weird as I like. So,
Right.
and for most star seeds, they have a very strong urge for freedom. They want to break free of the constraints of what I call the 3D matrix. They don't want to be bound in a corporate job. They don't want to be bound in a 3D family. They want to have a bit more freedom to explore.
Right.
And whereas most people who've been on the earth plane a long time might go into religion, and there's nothing wrong with a religion other than it's, a spiritual beings come in and kind of given something, and then suddenly this whole structure's been formed around it and been mistranslated and misinterpreted, and ego ideas been stuffed on it. So there's threads of golden light in every religion, but starseeds are not really attracted to religion. Maybe
Right.
initially they go into it, but they soon get disenchanted usually, and they go off exploring other things.
Hmm.
And so for me, I got disenchanted with Christianity. I went and explored paganism and Wicca and shamanism for years, and then metaphysics. And all of that journey taught me a lot more about Christianity than everything I learned in a church. I listened
Right.
to Jesus, the avatar, and I see him as a star being personally, not of this planet. He's come from
Right.
somewhere else,
Yes. Yeah.
talking in riddles, trying to
Right.
communicate with people in Palestine some things they probably couldn't understand. So he's talking in parables about, in my father's mansion there are many rooms and all of this kind of stuff, which to me sounds like we live in a vast universe and there are many planes of existence. But how can you tell that to Roman occupied Palestine? It's very hard.
Right. Right. Yeah.
They'd have thrown him out immediately.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I
That's
think that
that's
gives you an idea about it. And a lot of starseeds are attracted to nature because nature doesn't have ego issues that the human communities do. They're attracted to, like me, Star Trek, Doctor Who, time travel. This is signs that they are starseeds. A lot of light workers, I think, or most light workers, people who call themselves light workers are starseeds who have not gone as far as to identify that way. It's too far for them at the moment. So.
wow, that's interesting. So what is your feeling then about those of us, and I use this wording even though it's like it's looked down upon, empaths. What is your sense about an empath, and that where does that fit in?
Well, yes, thank you. Yes, star seeds are highly sensitive, highly empathic. As most star seeds find, empathy and sensitivity is a double-edged sword
Right.
because what happens is you can feel things that other people can't feel and know things other people can't know. But at the same time, you can be much more disturbed by the energies of the world than somebody who's been here a long time and goes, well, what's the problem? So I had someone come and fitted some wiring here for the router. And I said, no, I've got to have it wired in. I cannot have the Wi-Fi just blazing out because I feel it. I can feel it anytime it's turned on. He looked at me like,
Like you had two heads.
you
Right.
feel Wi-Fi?
Right.
I'm like, yeah, don't you? He's like scratching his head, like, no. Actually, Liz, who I work with, my partner, she hears electricity in the walls. I can't hear electricity in the walls. She's much
Right.
more sensitive. And so, I think it's even harder for her because I've toned down my sensitivity because I don't want to be disturbed that much by the world. I still am
Right.
disturbed by it, but she's more
Right.
disturbed. And so if you've got high sensitivity, you do need energetic protection. You do need to have a switched on intuition about what to avoid, what to go into, how to clear yourself daily of things you absorb. Or, um, I did an experiment years ago. I attended a workshop by this very strange woman who had a lot of Tibetan wisdom. And she said, do an experiment, sellotape silver tinfoil to the back of your heart, like a square of it, and go out for lunch break. So we all sellotaped tinfoil to the
Right.
back of our hearts. It's so weird. We were doing this weird stuff. We went
Yeah.
out, we come back, and when we came back, she said, "Okay, now take it off." And all of us looked at it. It was perforated by 1,000 dots and tiny little
Wow.
rips.
Right.
And she said, "These are the energy projections because they're bouncing around like tiny little, you know, asteroid things in the Earth plane. People
Right.
sending out stuff."
Yes.
And I was like, wow, okay, that's amazing. And then I told two friends years later, I'd forgotten about the experiment. And they went, no, it's rubbish. That doesn't work. So I said, oh, let's
Right.
do it then. So we did it.
Right.
This was about 5 years ago, I think. It must be in my, or 6 years ago, just coming out the dark night, maybe. And then we did it. And all of us again were like, oh, they were like, yeah. On
You
the
could see
back, and it
it.
had these
Yeah.
perforations everywhere. This was living in
Right.
London.
Right.
Maybe it's not so difficult. If you're in the countryside, probably won't be so much. But if you're in the city, which is bombarded with a load of stuff, then it was an interesting experiment, actually. I've only done it
Yes.
twice, and both times it seemed to work. So, yeah, we have to be mindful of what we pick up, what we absorb, what touches our energy, and how to release it.
Yes, absolutely. And do you feel like because this was, you know, I can remember that when everybody started talking about empaths and being highly sensitive, I knew that I was because I'd always been that being. But I can also remember, going to energy circles and healing circles, and there'd always be, the one or two that said, I'm an empath as well. But they would also then be like, oh, I'm really picking up dark energies in the room, and oh, this space feels really bad. Or they would be like, oh, I feel like I'm going to throw up. Like there was such a, a drama around it,
Yeah.
and I never had that, and I would sit there and I would think, well, maybe I'm not an empath because that I'm not having that same experience as, but I feel like that's where the empaths get a bad name because okay, so yes, we absorb things. For me, it's I'm very energetically sensitive. Growing up with the childhood that I had, my mother was an alcoholic. She suffered from chronic depression. I lived on eggshells. I learned to read everybody's energy in the room because I needed to know how I was supposed to conduct myself, right? To create some sense of safety. But I feel like going through all that has also really shown me the level of fear that I would hold in my vessel. Like, again, just that vibrational frequency of fear, and how the more that because that's, one of my biggest life lessons is recognizing that density and then, letting it not have any power over me, going through healing with it. And I
Mm.
feel like the more that I've done that, it's very energetically protective. Do you know what I mean? Like now,
Yeah,
I don't absorb other people's things. I don't walk into a room and be like, "Oh my God, I have to leave because this is horrible."
yeah.
What's your
There's
feeling on
a
that?
what you say is brilliant because there's a lot of people that train in psychic awareness but have got no personal development, meaning no awareness of their belief systems and how to shift it. That they may be carrying a lot of fear. And so I did work for a time in a place that taught psychic development, mediumship. And what I found in that college, a well-known college, and I can't name it because I don't want to let people know about it, but um, what I found was there was a lot of paranoia and a lot of people using their psychic abilities to check on who's gossiping about me, and a lot of cliqueiness. And what it came down to was a lot of fearful beliefs going on, and no processing of their own stuff. And so what happens is that your imagination and your psychic abilities can get hijacked. And so people
Right.
can start seeing and feeling dark energies everywhere. They see it
Hmm.
everywhere. And
Hmm.
literally they put dark glasses over themselves. And of course, there may actually be some there, or they may be pulling some in, but actually they may be projecting out a lot of fear around. And it's really important, certainly in the psychic mediumship community, to do more personal development, because that makes you a clear channel then, because you've looked in your unconscious mind and you've pulled out all the fearful stuff
Right.
around, evil. And if I open myself, will evil come in? And this is core for a lot of people, even if it's unconscious. If I open myself up, what about all the evil spirits and all of this kind of stuff?
Right.
It has to be
Yes.
processed. And you have to
Yes.
look at it and go, actually, no, the light is stronger. I know. You have to know it at all levels of your being, all levels, rather
Hmm.
than one bit goes, well, I'm protected by the light, but the unconscious bit, which is the strongest bit
Right.
actually, goes, I
Doesn't
don't
believe it.
feel
Yeah.
protected.
Yes. Yeah.
But then we're at war with ourselves, and we have
Right.
to heal that war. Otherwise, we're
Right.
not a clear channel. We become a compromised channel. We're not
Right.
a clear
Yeah.
mirror. We're a compromised mirror. We're a cracked mirror.
Yeah, exactly. And I know for myself, over the years, I've taught many psychic development circles, mediumship circles, and it's always the very beginning of my teachings is always, and I feel like there would be so many students that would come that would be kind of disappointed because it would be like, we're working on your spiritual foundation first. That's the place that we need to start. We're not, it's very easy to go out of body and and go into other dimensions and connect with, and that's the easy part. The difficult part is establishing that base for you, that grounding foundation, knowing your own energy, knowing it inside and out, and recognizing that this is a constant. Just because you show up and say, I'm a light worker or I'm a psychic or a medium, you are constantly working, doing the work, right? It has to be,
Yeah,
you can't just do the talk and not do the walk. You
yeah,
have to pull that all in together. And I know this firsthand. It makes a huge difference in your awakening of any of your abilities. The clearer your channel is, in Aboriginal studies, they call us a hollow bone, right? I don't know if you've
oh yeah,
ever heard that before.
yeah, yeah,
But that's exactly, in order to be a clear channel without distortion, You need to be able to have that clear space. So if at any time you're working from a place of fear or uncertainty, or you don't even believe in the light or have that connection, you won't have the gifts that you could possibly have, right?
Yeah. We have to process our ego mind, and our ego mind will hold a lot of fears. And the ego mind doesn't, when we first come to it, the mind, it doesn't trust all of this stuff, this spiritual stuff. It kind of,
Right.
I remember the first circle I sat in, the spiritual circle. It was a workshop. And I was looking around thinking, oh my God, this is so weird. There's 30 people, mostly women, because most
Right.
workshops these days are women.
Right.
And they were passing a talking stick round, and my ego mind was going, "Oh my God, what am I going to talk about? What are they talking about?" Oh,
Right.
and it was going like the clappers. And but over time, I learned to relax my mind and tune into my heart. Going, I just trust the process, and I'll know what to say when it comes, and that trusting the process, not letting the mind, because in our world, the mind has been overrated. It's over
Mm-hmm.
energized and put in a pedestal. Especially the left
Yes.
brain.
Yes.
We have to de-energize the mind, not because the mind is a valuable gift, but we have to connect it to our heart and spirit and use it so the mind becomes a tool. It's not trying to direct us all the time, protect us all the time. And all of these protective programming comes up, and a lot of people are blocked by their fearful ego. It's the whole idea of the familiarity zone. That Susan Jeffers thing.
Mm-hmm.
Feel the fear and do it anyway. When we come to the edge of our familiarity zone, what's familiar to us, fear kicks in, and all the protective inner guardians kick in. And so when we're starting doing something new, learning new skills, embracing a spiritual path, all the ego guardians, doubt, confusion, fear. What are you doing? Why are you doing this weird stuff? All that yummy, yummy.
Right.
These voices come up.
Yes.
We have to know the difference between our own ego voices and those of guides and angels and spirit. And
Absolutely.
that's a big test, certainly in the beginning stages, to know the difference between your own inner critic and
Yes.
and a higher self. It becomes very, very easy to tell the difference. One
Right.
is
It does
fearful.
when you start to do the work, though, right?
Yeah,
It's work in progress. I have an 18-year-old daughter, and so if teenage daughters will definitely give you lots of soul
yeah,
work to do.
sure.
And so, she's got her struggles and she's got all these things going. And when I'm listening to somebody, I read energy for a living, you can feel which part of them is communicating, right? And it's very much, the mind ego, right? And I always say, I remind her of this, the brain is not a very good interpreter. It gets real, things get really lost in that transaction. So the stuff that you're thinking is not necessarily the truth. And
Yeah,
so having that awareness is really, really important for sure.
it's a big one, isn't it? What you think may not be true. Or can you
Right.
question your thoughts? And for a lot of
Right.
people, they don't. They won't turn the light inwards and go, "I've had a thought, so it must be true." I had
Right.
one person say something to me that was complete nonsense. And I said, "Well, how do you know that's true?" She said, "Oh, I checked with the pendulum."
Right.
And I use pendulums a lot, but clearly this person was not a clear channel. And the kind of
Right.
question she was asking was not something was appropriate to ask higher guides anyway. The kind of questions like, does someone love you? Are they
Right.
faithful to you? Or those kind of questions. We don't
Right.
ask guides those kind of things.
Right. Right.
You kind of know in your gut what's going on really. You don't need to ask
Right.
them kind of thing.
Right.
So yeah, I think teenagers are trying to form a fixed identity. They can sense adulthood's on the horizon and they're scrambling quickly, like, I need to know who I am, and it's not going to be what my parents say I am. Whatever they say,
Right.
I'm going to
Right.
do something different. They kind of
Right.
so do that. So I
Yes.
remember a partner I was with for a long time. I met her stepson, when he was 2. Very strong starseed. My God, his eyes nearly knocked me across the room.
Mm.
But when he was 15, he rebelled, 14, 15, he started rebelling. He goes, I don't believe, I'm an atheist. That's
Right.
what he said. I'm an atheist.
Right.
Because me and his mother were clearly not. We were clearly scaling the spiritual ladder.
Right.
And I said to him, that's fantastic. Tell me why you're an atheist. And he was
Right.
like, And he was scrambling around for something other than, well, I am because you are not. It was,
Right, right,
but clearly, but I thought whatever he wants to believe is up to him. He was manifesting left, right, and center, and he still is, but he doesn't call himself a starseed or anything like that. But he is on the path of manifesting and creating a life and service, but he's not really kind of embraced that part, which is fine. He's still in his
right,
20s now.
right,
So
right.
he's on his journey.
Yes.
Everyone comes to it or doesn't come to it in their own time.
Yeah,
But yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely.
fixed
So
identity, we have to make our identities a little bit more fluid. When we come to the path that we build
I
this fixed
agree.
identity, and then we have to kind of
I
start
agree.
dissolving
I
it.
agree. I agree. And it's part of the unprogramming because of course on this planet so much reverence is given to the brain and the thought and the academic all of that. So for us, us to be coming in and saying, "You know what? Don't listen to your mind. We don't want you to be connecting with your mind. This is a no thought activity that we're going to be doing." People are like,
Yeah,
"What do you mean?"
I know. I don't know if you knew that was famous case of Carl Jung. He had he was investigating synchronicity and mystical stuff, and he had a client who was totally in her head, rationalizing everything, and he wanted to find out. And the client had a dream about a golden scarab, and she was telling him the dream. And at the window of his, I think he was in Switzerland at the time, there was this knocking on the window, and it was a golden scarab beetle knocking at the window. He
Ah,
opened the window, caught it in his hand, and showed the woman the beetle. And she, from that moment on, transformed. She stopped it being in her head. She was totally shocked by this
wow.
revelation that she somehow then got into more of a deeper connection with herself. So that was how he broke through the rational. And sometimes we have to break through people's rationality or allow them time to
Right.
break through, go off and rationality alone will not get you very far, as a lot of people are finding.
No, absolutely. Especially with the whole ascension of this planet, the ascension of the species. All, yeah, it's definitely an unlearning. We're going through that process of unlearning everything. So
Yeah.
before we wrap up, because we could probably sit there and talk about all of this because this is so interesting. I want people to know, our listeners to know a little bit about the soul matrix that you're doing so that what it entails, and of course I'll have all the links so they'll know how to reach out with you. But tell me what this project is.
So when I came out of the dark night, guides saying I did podcast interviews with people. They said do transmissions. I was doing more transmissions, and then at a certain point they said do healing sessions, and I was saying, well, in doing what? And they said you'll work it out. Like, oh, I hate that when they say you'll work it out. Such a bullshit answer, really, I
Yes.
think.
Yes.
Anyway, I did. So what I did as well, all the trainings I did, I started pulling out all the bits that really worked in my life and putting it together. It didn't really fit easily at the beginning. So I had to kind of sit with it for a while. How do these things fit? And so that's been like a jigsaw puzzle, fitting different bits. So now I'm further down the line. There's practical stuff like the coaching and more NLP training I did, which is quite practical and useful. And then
Mhm.
there's the more metaphysical out there, energetic healing, psychic surgery, calling angelic healing fires, all of that stuff. So, and bringing it all together. That's been my challenge, bringing all of these different systems together in what worked for me. And it's still growing, to be honest. I'm still learning and
Mhm.
growing with it.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
it's interesting, and yeah, I feel the same way. There's been so many aspects to my healing and my soul ascensions path that I've taken some of this and some of that and some of that, and now, the trick is how do I put this all into a cohesive package that other people can follow and use that doesn't make me look like I'm crazy and obviously not doing well on this planet. So
yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
absolutely. For
Yeah.
sure. So that's great. So we'll do that, but it's the soulmatrix.com. They can definitely go there. They can follow you on Instagram. You've got stuff on YouTube. There's lots of, I see now that you're starting to actually work with, spiritually based businesses. You're going to start to help entrepreneurs with that, which is exciting.
Oh, yeah, I've got a book actually. Where is it? Here it is. So I'm very proud of this one. Oops, upside down. Spiritual Entrepreneur. You can get it on Amazon. So
Yeah,
I'm
that's
really proud of this
beautiful.
one. Yeah.
Beautiful. And we'll put those links on so you guys can check that out. Well, this has been wonderful. And I again I thank you for creating this time in your busy schedule to be able to
Thanks,
sit down
Judy.
and hold space with us. And
Oh,
I
pleasure.
definitely open you to come back and sit down and we'll explore things more. Maybe we could even get you to do a transmission on with everybody.
Okay. Yeah. Let's
That'd be
be in
beautiful.
touch. All right.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening. And we'll have all the links in there. And we'll see you guys next time. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Collective SOULversations podcast. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen, and we hope that you found our chat both inspiring and thought-provoking. Your support means everything to us, and we're excited to keep this journey going with you. So make sure that you subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss an episode. If you enjoyed today's conversation, we'd love for you to leave us a review and share your thoughts in the comments. Your feedback helps us grow and connect with more wonderful listeners like you. Until next time, stay curious and keep those soulversations flowing.